The film opens with a woman named Isabel, who is heavily pregnant and about to give birth. She and her mother travel to the hospital by bus, but unfortunately, she can't bear the pain and ends up giving birth on the bus. Isabel gives birth to a handsome boy, whom she later names Victor. Sadly, a few weeks later, Isabel dies, leaving Victor behind. Several years later, Victor is now an adult, in his early 20s, working hard as a pizza delivery boy. It's also during this time that it's discovered that Victor is having an affair with a woman named Clara, who is already married. However, Clara's husband, a police officer named Sancho, discovers their relationship. He and his partner, David, try to track Victor down and settle scores with him. On the other hand, Victor is also in a relationship with a curly-haired woman named Elena. They are having a minor argument. However, Sancho soon arrives and tries to teach Victor a lesson. A fight broke out between Victor and Sancho, but Victor unexpectedly injured David's leg, landing him in a 5-year prison sentence. Years passed, and as a result of the incident, David became paralyzed and resigned from the police force. He is now a disabled athlete. Meanwhile, Victor was finally released after serving his sentence. David was very famous and, it turned out, had married Elena. This greatly upset Victor, who intended to settle scores with him. Victor began to formulate a plan. He approached Clara again, and he also began to find out where Elena worked. It turned out she was now working at an orphanage. Meanwhile, David, knowing that Victor had been released, tried to meet him. There, David told Victor that he loved Elena and that he would not allow her to interfere with his life. Victor promised not to interfere with their lives, but it was only a deception. Deep down, he didn't want Elena to be with anyone else. Some time later, Victor met Clara. He invited her home and they finally made love after a long breakup. The next day, Victor arrived at the orphanage, surprising Elena. He had come there to apply for a job there to get closer to Elena. There, Elena reminded Victor that their past was over, that she had David, and that she couldn't go back to him. However, Victor realized that Elena still loved him, and that Elena didn't love David. Meanwhile, Clara and Sancho's relationship worsened, often fighting over trivial matters. One night, while arguing, Sancho accidentally hit Clara. David continued to keep an eye on Victor, even one day seeing him on his way to Elena's workplace. Not wanting anything to happen, David confronted Elena and told her to be careful. However, Elena seemed to ignore Victor's words. David finally confronted Victor and warned him not to mess with Elena. However, given David's current situation, Victor didn't care at all. A commotion ensued, but Victor was certain to win, and David couldn't do anything. Afterward, Elena confronted Victor, asking him to stay away from her, and she also said that this might be their last meeting. However, a few days later, Elena returned to Victor's house. She couldn't keep her eyes off him and immediately invited him to be intimate. Afterward, Elena confessed to David that she had just been intimate with Victor. David was emotional and couldn't accept this reality. He couldn't believe Elena would do this, and in the end, David chose to leave. Meanwhile, Clara, who had fallen in love with Victor, intended to leave Sancho. A commotion ensued, and they threatened each other. However, in the end, Clara decided to leave this world forever. Sancho, unable to live without Clara, ultimately followed Clara's lead. Clara and Sancho were gone, and David had left Elena behind. Years passed, and Victor finally reunited with Elena, and soon they would have their first child. And the film ended. That was the plot of our film this time. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you again in our next film.